No contact isn't the end game, it's the reset. It's one of the most misunderstood steps in the healing and self-rebuilding process after a breakup. Too many people use no contact as a tactic. They see it as a trick to manipulate someone into missing them, into realizing their worth, or into crawling back. But here's the truth: no contact is not a strategy for revenge or validation. It's the space you give yourself to stop reacting and start reclaiming. When a relationship ends, emotions run high. There's confusion, sadness, regret, and sometimes desperation. You want answers. You want closure. You want them to tell you they made a mistake, that they still love you, that they want to try again. And in that emotional chaos, your instinct might be to reach out, to stay connected in some way, even if it's just a like on social media or a casual check-in. But when you do that, you're not giving yourself the break your heart actually needs. You're staying in the emotional loop that the relationship created. No contact gives you the first real moment of stillness. It breaks the constant pattern of checking your phone, analyzing every message, or hoping for signs that they still care. And when you remove yourself from that noise, you start to hear something else, your own voice. You begin to get clear on what you were really feeling in the relationship, not just the romantic highs, but the deeper truths, the misalignment, the neglect, the moments you accepted less than you deserved because you were scared to lose them. You start to see how much of yourself was invested in being chosen rather than choosing. And this is why no contact is a reset. It's not about erasing them from your life forever, although that might happen. It's about pausing the emotional dependency and creating a space where you are no longer defined by someone else's presence or absence. It's in that space that real transformation begins. You start to recenter your energy. You begin to shift your focus from them to you, not in a selfish way, but in a healing one. You ask yourself, what did I ignore about myself in that relationship? What parts of me did I silence to keep the peace? Where did I shrink, accommodate, compromise too much? And most importantly, who am I when I'm not orbiting someone else's emotional availability? It's tempting to think that silence will make someone miss you, but that's not the point. The real power is that silence helps you stop missing parts of yourself. It gives you the strength to stop chasing someone else's validation and start creating your own inner peace. And when you do that, something incredible happens. You begin to rebuild your self-worth from a place that doesn't require anyone else's approval. No contact is the boundary you set, not just with them, but with yourself. It's you saying, I'm not going to keep hurting myself by trying to fix something that broke me. It's a declaration of emotional independence. It's the line between your old self, the one who is constantly hoping for breadcrumbs, and the new self, who demands a full meal or nothing at all. And maybe, just maybe, in that reset, they do notice. Maybe your silence speaks louder than your words ever could. Maybe they start to feel your absence in ways they never felt your presence. But even if they don't, even if they never come back, you'll realize something far more important, that you didn't do this for them, you did it for you. Because the reset wasn't about rewinding the relationship, it was about restarting your life on your terms. Your growth is what he can't unsee. It's not a dramatic text you send. It's not the carefully curated Instagram post meant to show how unbothered you are. It's not even the absence you leave behind when you stop calling or messaging. It's the quiet, undeniable evolution he didn't expect. It's the version of you that begins to emerge, not louder, not colder, but stronger, clearer, more grounded. And that version, once seen, can't be unseen. After a breakup, there's often a subconscious expectation that time will stand still, that you'll pause in that heartbreak, frozen in the version of you that still wants him, still waits, still wonders. And if you're not careful, you'll live into that version. You'll stay stuck trying to decode what went wrong, replaying memories, blaming yourself, trying to rewrite the ending. But growth happens when you stop looking back and start choosing forward. It happens the moment you realize You don't need closure from him, you need clarity from yourself. And as you begin to grow, you change in ways that are subtle at first. You no longer need to fill the silence with apologies or explanations. You stop trying to prove your worth to someone who couldn't see it the first time. You become less reactive. You stop showing up in their world with your heart in your hands, hoping they'll handle it better this time. You begin to realize that you were never too much. You were just giving too much to someone who couldn't hold it. That kind of growth? That's not easy to miss. Because it shifts the dynamic, it creates contrast. The next time he sees you, whether in person, online, or even just through mutual friends, it hits differently. You're no longer the woman who is hoping for his attention. You're the woman who doesn't need it. That change in your energy, your posture, your priorities, it speaks louder than anything you could say. And what's truly powerful is that this growth isn't performative. You're not doing it for him. You're not dressing up your pain to make him jealous. You're actually healing. You're actually learning. You're building habits, setting boundaries, rediscovering joy in places he was never part of. And that kind of change can't be faked. It radiates. People can feel it when they talk to you, when they look at you, when they realize you're no longer waiting to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. There's something deeply unsettling for him about realizing you've grown past needing him. Not because he doesn't want good things for you, but because the emotional safety net he once had is gone. You're not lingering in the background anymore. You're not reaching out on holidays or checking in on his life. You're not a chapter waiting to be reopened. You're a story that has turned the page. And when a man sees that growth, truly sees it, it forces him to reflect. Maybe not immediately, maybe not even consciously, but something shifts. He starts to question the version of you he thought he knew. He thought you'd always be there. He thought you'd always try. And now, here you are, evolved. Not bitter, not broken, just better. Your growth isn't revenge. It's a return to yourself. It's the best kind of closure, the one that doesn't require a conversation. It's the peace that comes from finally realizing you were always enough. You just stopped settling for people who made you doubt it. And when he finally sees that, when he finally understands that the woman you've become can't be lured back by the same version of him, he won't forget. Because some things, once seen, leave a mark. And your growth, that's the imprint that lingers. Scarcity builds value, but it has to be real. Not crafted, not faked, not staged like some game to manipulate his emotions. The kind of scarcity that truly shifts how someone sees you is the kind that comes from genuine self-respect. It's the space you create when you stop making yourself endlessly available to someone who didn't value your presence in the first place. There's a difference between pulling away to get attention and pulling away because you've finally had enough. The first is about control, the second is about clarity. You're not trying to play hard to get, you've simply become hard to access because you're no longer living at the emotional mercy of someone else. That shift in energy doesn't come with fireworks or grand declarations. It comes quietly, and it comes from within. And that's exactly why it's powerful. When you're always available, always the one reaching out, always trying to keep the connection alive, you're sending a clear message, even if you don't realize it. You're saying, you can have my energy, my time, my presence, whenever you want. You don't even have to earn it. And over time, that consistency, that accessibility starts to work against you. What once felt like love begins to feel like pressure. What once felt comforting becomes routine. The more someone knows you'll be there, regardless of how they treat you, the less they value your presence. Scarcity works not because you're trying to make someone chase you, but because it forces them to consider what it feels like not to have you. But again, this only works when the scarcity is sincere. You can't pretend to move on while secretly hoping they'll come running. You can't block them today and unblock them next week hoping to provoke a reaction. That's not scarcity. That's insecurity in disguise. Real scarcity doesn't look like emotional games. It looks like emotional growth. You become scarce when you stop overgiving, when you stop explaining, when you stop trying to prove you're worth staying for. You become scarce when you start living with purpose again, when you stop editing your life in the hope that they'll notice. You let your absence speak for itself. And more importantly, you let your life move on without trying to make them a part of the next chapter. And when that kind of energy shift happens, it's undeniable. You no longer feel like a backup plan. You no longer show up as someone who needs closure or validation. You become selective, not in a cold or distant way, but in a confident, grounded way. You know your worth, and you're not afraid to walk away from anything that doesn't reflect it. The irony is, that's often the moment they finally start to feel your value. When the version of you that would drop everything for them is no longer there. When you're not texting just to check in. When you're no longer orbiting their life through subtle likes and comments. Suddenly, your absence becomes uncomfortable. They start wondering what changed. They start replaying moments in their mind, not because you said something, but because you stopped saying anything. And here's the truth. People don't respect what's always there. They respect what they could lose. But for that to happen, the possibility of loss has to be real. Not staged, not threatened. It has to be something they can feel. And that only happens when you've truly detached. When your life is full, your energy is focused elsewhere, and your attention is no longer for sale to someone who didn't protect it when they had it. Scarcity isn't about making someone suffer. It's about giving yourself room to breathe, to heal, to grow. And in doing so, you shift from being an option to becoming a memory that carries weight. Because when someone realizes they don't have access to you anymore, not because you're punishing them, but because you've evolved beyond needing them, they can't unsee it. That's when scarcity becomes value. And that's when your absence becomes more powerful than your presence ever was. Your energy speaks louder than silence. People often assume that if they just stay quiet after a breakup, if they don't text, don't call, don't like their photos, it will send a message. And yes, silence can be powerful, but silence on its own is just the absence of noise. What gives silence its weight, its gravity, is the energy behind it. That's what people feel, that's what lingers, that's what they remember. Not just that you went quiet, but how different you felt when you did. When you stop reaching out, it's not just the lack of contact they notice. It's the emotional shift that follows. Before, your energy was tethered to them. You were emotionally invested, waiting, hoping, reacting. Whether you were sending messages or not, they could still feel that emotional pull. The door was still slightly open. But when you shift your energy, when you truly detach, redirect, and reclaim it, that's when the silence takes on a completely different meaning. It's no longer just, she's not talking to me. It becomes something in her has changed. And that change is felt even if you never say a word. You're not posting revenge pictures or pretending to live your best life to prove a point. You're not signaling how unbothered you are. You are unbothered. Not because you don't care, but because you've begun to care more about yourself. That shift is real. And real energy doesn't need to announce itself. It's felt. Energy shows up in everything you do, in how you walk into a room, in how you speak to people, in what you choose to focus on. When you stop being emotionally available to someone who once had constant access to you, they feel it, even if they don't know why. You're not angry, you're not bitter, you've just realigned. And that kind of alignment is magnetic. This is why moving on isn't about blocking someone or pretending they don't exist. It's about a deeper, more personal transformation. Your energy changes when you stop making someone else the center of your emotional life. When your focus shifts to your growth, your peace, your passions. That's when people begin to feel your absence in a much deeper way. Not because you're gone, but because the version of you they were used to is no longer available. People sense when they no longer live rent-free in your mind. When you're no longer watching their stories, no longer curious about who they're seeing, no longer hoping for a, "Hey, how have you been?" That absence isn't just physical, it's energetic. You've unplugged, and that's far more impactful than any clever quote or cryptic post you could put online. The beauty of this kind of energy shift is that it doesn't need to be loud, it doesn't need to be dramatic. It's the calm confidence of someone who knows their worth, someone who doesn't chase, someone who no longer looks for signs or holds on to hope disguised as patience. It's the energy of someone who understands that if someone truly valued them, they wouldn't have to wonder. When your energy is rooted in self-respect, it creates a natural boundary. People may try to re-enter your life to test that old version of you, but they'll quickly realize something's different. You don't respond the same way, you don't engage in the same emotional patterns. You've changed the frequency. And when you raise your frequency, people who are still operating on the old one either rise to meet you or fade away. That's why energy speaks louder than silence, because silence can be broken. But when someone senses that your energy has moved on, that they no longer occupy space in your emotional world, it hits differently. It's not a performance, it's presence. The presence of someone who has reclaimed their power. And in that stillness, in that quiet, your energy becomes unforgettable. Go beyond. Don't just disappear, reinvent. There's a common misconception after no contact that simply vanishing will send the ultimate message. That if you go quiet long enough, if you pull yourself off their radar, they'll suddenly realize your worth and come crawling back. But disappearance alone isn't enough. Silence may create a pause, but it's reinvention that creates impact. You don't just want to fade away, you want to evolve. You want to become the version of yourself that they never saw coming and will never forget. Disappearing gives you distance. It creates space between you and the person you were when you were wrapped up in that relationship. But reinvention is what fills that space with something better, something stronger, something that doesn't revolve around their opinion of you. It's tempting to think that time will do the work for you, that just stepping back is enough to shift the narrative. But time alone doesn't heal. Time plus intention does. Reinvention isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more fully you. The version of yourself that may have been buried under the weight of compromise, insecurity, or longing. It's about reclaiming the parts of you that you lost while trying to fit into someone else's life. And that process starts with brutal honesty. Who were you in that relationship? What did you tolerate? Where did you shrink yourself just to keep the peace? Reinvention begins the moment you stop pretending that person was your best self. There's a quiet power in reinventing after heartbreak. You're no longer trying to be someone they want. You're becoming someone you're proud to be. And that shift is profound. You stop seeking closure and start building confidence. You replace overthinking with action. You invest in yourself, not to prove anything to them, but to finally show up for you. Reinvention is felt in your habits, in how you wake up, in what you read, who you surround yourself with, what you pursue. It's in the way you carry yourself. You stop living in reaction to the past and start creating a future that excites you. You pick up old hobbies, you set new goals, you start to explore the life you put on hold while waiting for someone else to choose you. And what's remarkable is how that reinvention becomes undeniable. Maybe he doesn't see it right away. Maybe he's still living in the memory of who you were. But at some point, whether through a conversation, a glimpse on social media, or mutual friends, he will sense it. The woman who once doubted herself, once begged for clarity, once made excuses for his inconsistency, doesn't exist anymore. And that realization? That's what stays with him. He doesn't miss the silence. He misses the woman who grew in the silence. The woman who came out of it sharper, stronger, more at peace. Because it's not your absence that will haunt him. It's the fact that he's no longer relevant to the story you're writing now. You didn't just disappear, you transformed. You didn't wait for him to come back, you moved forward. And in doing so, became someone he now has to earn all over again, if he even gets the chance. Reinvention doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need applause. It happens in the quiet, in the unseen moments, where you choose your growth over your grief. And ironically, that's what creates the most lasting impression. People remember impact, not desperation. They remember power, not pleading. Reinvention gives you both. It's the difference between fading into the background and stepping into your light, between being forgotten and becoming unforgettable. So don't just go silent, hoping he'll notice your absence. Go beyond. Step into the woman you were always meant to be. Let your silence be more than the sound of distance. Let it be the space where your reinvention was born. Because when you stop waiting to be remembered and start living in a way that's impossible to forget, everything changes. He may look back and realize what he lost, but more importantly, you will look forward and realize what you've gained. And that is where your power truly begins.